Nowadays, games are long, and some of them are pretty monotonous, but some give you something to do that's new after a while. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But we're talking about when games become different after you've played them a long time. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 games that change after 100 hours. Starting off with number 10, it's Fallout 4. There's a lot to do in Fallout 4. You can easily spend hundreds of hours clearing the map and playing through the story. You never even actually have to touch the settlement stuff. For a lot of people, the general flow is that they spend 100 hours or more just wandering around, taking in the sights, and completing most of the curated content before moving on to just screw around with the settlement system. And it might as well be a different game. There's the normal game, which is a first-person FPS RPG hybrid, and then there's this whole other game mode where you build bases and keep settlers happy, and it's jarring.
I hope you realize how much you did for us.
You spend 100 hours blowing up raider heads and wandering on this vast wasteland, and honestly, some people don't even bother with the base stuff. I sure didn't at first, but for the people who do, you can really lose a lot of time just making the perfect base. It always ends up looking kind of crappy, to be fair. It's Fallout after all. You can't really build anything nice per se, but you can always try. It's like a compulsion. Once you get going, you really can't control it. There's also the possibility that people experience the game the opposite way, went all in on settlements right at the jump, but I have to guess that's way less common. Everything else in Fallout is much more Fallout-like, so when you put in Fallout, the game, to play Fallout, you probably do a lot more Fallout stuff before the much more elaborate version of Fallout Shelter, you know? Either way, 100 hours in, you're looking at a really different experience than when you started with. At number 9 is Death Stranding, a game where change is built in the core gameplay loop. When you start out, the environment's barren, there's nothing there, it's a struggle to get anywhere, even the most basic deliveries are challenging at the start of Death Stranding, and that's where the impression that the game is basically just a walking simulator comes from. Because make no mistake, you spend a lot of the first dozen or so hours just walking around. As the game goes on, though, you can connect up the network and get access to new technology. The whole game just completely starts to change. It's not a big switch that gets flipped at the 100-hour mark or anything. A lot of people will be done with the game by then, but it's actually more of a gradual change. You start putting down roads and bridges, so instead of walking, you can drive. There's zip lines and ladders, and you eventually get technology that'll make deliveries for you or make getting around a lot easier. The map becomes a totally different place by the 100-hour mark. What used to be a completely barren wasteland is now completely transformed, and it's super easy to get around. At the start of the game, you're about as low-tech as it gets. You're just a guy with some boxes on his back, but by the end, you got drones, trucks, cannons, all kinds of stuff that makes getting around way faster, way more convenient, and it's some of the most satisfying progression there is in a video game. You just have to get through a lot of drudgery to get to that good stuff. At number 8 is Breath of the Wild. To complete the Champion's Ballad DLC, you really gotta do a lot. You gotta get all the Divine Beasts freed, you gotta do all the questline stuff, and there's so much that entails. Completion times vary wildly when it comes to this game. It's a really open-ended, frankly, flexible campaign, more or less, but it's not uncommon for somebody to play Breath of the Wild for 100 hours or more, and really not even get close to finishing this quest. The DLC reward is absolutely game-changing, though. It's a motorcycle, the Master Cycle Zero, and it's amazing. With this one piece of equipment, this game is transformed into a driving game, and it's amazing. Getting around isn't easy in Breath of the Wild. In the wake of Tears of the Kingdom, where it is a lot easier to traverse the environment, you kind of forget how few tools you had in the first game to get around. The glider was a lot more limited. It was pretty easy to lose horses, and you were mostly stuck just fast traveling around or dashing everywhere, which could take forever. So the Master Cycle really just felt like this huge game changer in the best possible way. You may not have much left to do in the game by the time you get it, but driving around just feels like a different game somehow got put inside a Zelda game. And number 7 is Monster Hunter World, a massive game where you can spend hundreds of hours in the base game alone before even touching the Iceborne expansion. But what's especially crazy is how much the game saves for after you finish the expansion. Beating the final boss of Iceborne unlocks the post-game area of the Guiding Lands, which is this whole new area with all of its own mechanics to deal with. In this region, the super hard tempered variants of monsters roam around, making it easier to farm them for resources. In Monster Hunter, the true endgame goal is is fashion, more or less. So having access to the best monsters to make armor out of, it just makes sense. There's also this weirdly convoluted region level system that makes it, I don't know, it's annoying. You research monsters in each region of the guiding lands, the region ranks up, it causes new species of beasts to start showing up. It's obviously different. The annoying thing about this is that you level up one region beyond the level cap, it starts lowering the region level of a different area, so sometimes you don't have a choice but to grind out region levels if you want certain monsters to show up. Basically, it's more grinding in a Monster Hunter game, so big deal, what's new? The biggest change is that you're grinding hunts and research, which, I mean, depending on your taste, it may or may not be better. Definitely different, though. And number 6 is Yakuza 3. When I say Yakuza, what's the first thing you think of? Brutal combat, melodramatic stories, goofy side quests? Well, it's all that and more for the first couple dozen hours of playtime. But if you're the type that's crazy enough to try to go for 100% completion, you'll see what these games are actually about, which is incredibly frustrating mini-games. The requirements to get 100% are just absurd. If you just play through the story, it's probably one of the most chill games in the series. You get to hang out in Okinawa, help out some orphans, nothing too intense. But if you want to get the minigame master achievement, which of course required 100% completion, you're in for a world of pain. Sure, some of these minigames are easy, like karaoke, but then you don't just have to play, you have to do well in a whole slew of casino minigames like poker, blackjack, roulette, and a whole bunch of other games you probably never heard of, like shogi, chohan, si-lo, and good luck with that. The bar games are also some of the worst. Pool, bowling, darts, they're all nightmares to complete. Now you can easily spend the average length of this game's campaign just trying to finish all the requirements for these games. Oh yeah, and I hope you're good at Mahjong, because in order to master it, you gotta earn over 50,000 points in one match. There's entire guides just explaining how to play this one, specifically for people trying to get the achievement in Yakuza 3. That's how bad it is. Play the game normally, Yakuza is a melodramatic crime adventure game, but play for 100% completion. You're gonna find that this game is actually primarily about minigames. Lots and lots of frustrating minigames. And number 5 is Escape from Tarkov. I think for a lot of people, the experience of playing an online shooter or a lot of multiplayer games in general is pretty different depending on how much you've played it. A game can feel like a tedious, unfun mess for the first 100 hours to suddenly click and become this addictive, amazing thing that you want to spend all of your time doing. Sometimes it takes less time, sometimes it takes more. One of those games that definitely needs a lot of practice to get any good at it is Tarkov, though. Not just because it's an unforgivably difficult game, but because it's also really complex. The core of it's pretty simple. It's an extraction shooter. You're dropped on one of the map, you gotta do lots of stuff getting to the other side, but it's just getting to the other side more or less. Along the way, you try to loot as much as you can, and there's, roaming bots and other players that can kill you. That's basically all there's to it.
One-on-one.
However, the gameplay is a lot more complicated than that. It's the kind of game where just by looking at it, you might think it doesn't seem that complex, but the longer somebody plays it, the more systems start to come together. It's one of those games where you just have to keep at it, die a lot, and slowly learn from your experiences before it begins to click. And number 4 is Slay the Spire, Ascension rank 20. Whenever you manage to complete a run and slay the Spire, you unlock an Ascension rank for the character. At first, it's a pretty simple modifier that doesn't do a lot to change the game, like Ascension 1 makes elite enemies spawn more often, but as you continue, you complete more runs, you unlock higher Ascension routes, it just gets tougher and tougher. Keep in mind, Slay the Spire, already a tough game. It's a card-based roguelike that can be absolutely brutal on a regular run. Ascension rank also goes all the way up to 20, and every modifier stacks, so at the highest rank, you're looking at a massive disadvantage. For a lot of players, getting to this moment takes way more than 100 hours, but you get the idea. By the time players hit Ascension level 17, it's basically like playing a different game. The strategies that are required, the gameplay modifiers, throw more and more at you, everything just changes. The final Ascension rank modifier is totally absurd. You have to fight the Act 3 boss twice, and yeah, it's a run-ender for a lot of players, and you gotta beat it twice in a row. And this is after all the modifiers that make everything tougher, lower your max XP, curse you at the start of every run. Slay the Spire, it starts as a tough but fair challenge, but by the 100-hour mark, it's not. It's a masochism simulator. Like, at least it's optional. You don't have to do this stuff, but yeah, it's a big wow. And number 3 is Nioh 2. Souls-likes tend to stick to a pretty similar formula, where you beat the game, you unlock a second playthrough, it's more difficult, but your experience and equipment carry over. Nioh 2 has this, but unlike other games in the genre where they're basically done at that point, in this game, you're just getting started. After beating the game, you unlock a whole series of difficulty modes. Dream of the Strong, it's basically New Game Plus 1, Dream of the Demon, New Game Plus 2, Dream of the Wise, New Game Plus 3, and finally, Dream of the Neo, New Game Plus 4. That's a lot more game, but at least it doesn't actually make you go through all of them in order. Like, try to jump immediately from Dream of the Strong to Dream of the Neo, you're gonna get slaughtered on the spot. You're free to try, but you will. The standard gameplay is a Souls-like. It's a highly deadly third-person action game, but the post-game really more of a Diablo-style game where loot is essential for making the best builds. Just getting strong enough to take on the final new game can take 100 hours or more, and it's only then you finally unlock the Underworld, an entirely new gameplay mode that's meant to be the ultimate challenge of the game. You never see gameplay modes unlocked this deep into the game, but Nioh 2 is just nuts. That's just how the game is. Each floor contains a section of the game and a boss. It's 108 floors deep, and if you finish that, you unlock 30 more floors that are randomly generated called the Depths. At this point, you're just playing a different game. It's like a full-blown Diablo game, just third person instead of top down. At number 2 is Dragon Quest IX's Epilogue. When people say the main game is just a tutorial for the post-game, they're usually talking about multiplayer-focused games, or games as a service like Destiny, not games like Dragon Quest IX, which is a mostly single-player RPG. In this case, it fits though, because the main story is as long as you'd expect from a Dragon Quest game, and the post-game easily doubles it. You can spend 100 hours alone just going through the post-game. That's how much stuff there is to do. There's so much extra story, bonus dungeons, bonus bosses, and they're only accessible after the game's beaten, so it's to the point where it's absurd. You don't even get full access to an airship until this point, and that's when most of the game's world finally opens up. It's not all just more of the same Dragon Quest stuff either. There's these grottos all over the place with randomly generated content that mix up the gameplay significantly. Dragon Quest games are known for their endgame and the post-game content at this point. It's just accepted there's going to be a lot of it, but 9 really beats them all on content alone. There's almost too much stuff to do. And finally, at number 1, it's Final Fantasy XIV. Take any MMO, and your experience in the first 100, or maybe a couple hundred of hours, is going to look a lot different from what you're doing later. That's especially true of such a story-heavy MMO like Final Fantasy XIV. For those first couple dozen hours, your experience is pretty similar to a standard Final Fantasy game. Sure, presentation's a little different, sometimes wants you to play with other people once in a while, but for the most part, it's primarily about advancing the story. Nothing's meant to be super challenging, and you're basically just doing a lot of normal RPG stuff, traveling around, fighting enemies, completing side quests, all that basic stuff. So then you finish the story. That's when the game feels radically different, and it starts to feel like a cooperative MMO. That's when you get into ground activities like raids and extreme trials, where you actually have to think about your build and work as a team with a ground of other players. There's crafting to get into, houses to decorate, random dungeons to go down, and a ton of stuff to do that's very different from the main story. It kind of works the same way as, basically any other MMO like World of Warcraft, but Final Fantasy XIV is an especially story-focused MMO, so the difference stands out even more. Quick bonus for you, Mega Man Battle Network 3, you wouldn't think a Mega Man game could even be played for 100 hours, let alone change after all that time, but this one's special. They're unique RPGs that have the usual post-game content you'd expect from an RPG, but 3 goes above and beyond. There's just so much to do after finishing the game. There's additional plot, new quests, and overall the game gets a lot more challenging, so there's a lot more new stuff, and it's a lot harder than the base game, so you really have to adapt and change your playstyle to keep up. It's an old one, but the post-game's so good and so long, it deserves a shout-out, even if, it's one that people kind of have well tread at this point. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.